Hi everybody! Today's story is The Hardy Tin Soldier. I remember when I was young, a lot of people played with tin soldiers and lead soldiers and things like that. And they were quite a cool thing to have. So boys had soldiers and girls had dolls. It was we didn't share like we do nowadays, which is really sad. But I used to play with soldiers and things. So, this story is by somebody called Hans Christian Andersen, and you might know him from the story The Little Mermaid, because he wrote the story The Little Mermaid, and he's from Copenhagen. So, you might find that you'll hear a few stories from him. But today, The Hardy Tin Soldier. Now, don't forget to listen to the end, because there's going to be a shout out for a little girl today. And don't be fast forwarding it, because that's not the gig. You're meant to be having a story read, an old-fashioned story read to you, and this is it. So let's listen together and look and see what happens and see what we can make of The Hardy Tin Soldier. There were once 25 tin soldiers. 25. They were all brothers, for they all had been born of one tin spoon. They shouldered their muskets and looked straight before them. Their uniform was red and blue and very splendid. The first thing they'd heard in the world when the lid was taken off their box, was the words "Tin Soldiers." These words were uttered by a little boy clapping his hands. The soldiers had been given to him for his birthday, and now he had put them upon the table. Each soldier was exactly like the rest, only one of them was just a little bit different because he only had one leg. For he had been cast last, and there had not been enough tin to finish him off. But he stood as firmly upon that one leg as the others did on their two, and it was just this soldier who became remarkable. On the table on which they had been placed stood many other playthings, but the toy that attracted most attention was a neat castle of cardboard. Through the little windows we could see straight into the hall. Before the castle, some little trees were placed round a little looking glass which was there to represent a clear lake. Waxen swans swam on the lake and were mirrored in it. Can you imagine that? So we've got a cardboard castle and tin soldiers and little swans made of wax on a mirror to look like they're swimming on a lake. That's quite a cool thing to do. This was all very pretty, but the prettiest of all was a little lady who stood at the open door of the castle. She was also cut out in paper, but she had a dress of the clearest gauze and a little narrow blue ribbon over her shoulders that looked like a scarf. And in the middle of this ribbon was a shining tinsel rose as big as her whole face. The little lady stretched out both her arms, for she was a dancer, and then she lifted one leg so high that the tin soldier could not see it at all, and thought that, like himself, she only had one leg. Oh, that would be the wife for me, he thought. But she is very grand, and she lives in a castle, and I only have a box, and there are 25 of us in that. It is no place for her, so I must try to make my acquaintance with her. So he fancying this ballerina with a leg in the air. Then he lay down at full length behind the snuff box which was on the table. There he could easily watch the little dainty lady, who continued to stand on one leg without losing her balance. When the evening came, all of the other tin soldiers were put into their box, and the people in the house went to bed. Now the toys began to play at visiting and at war and giving balls, and the tin soldiers rattled in their box, for they wanted to join but could not lift the lid. The nutcracker threw somersaults, and the pencil amused itself on the table. There was so much noise that the canary woke up and began to speak too, and even in verse. It's a bit like if you've seen the film Toy Story, I don't know, and all the toys come alive when people are not looking. It's a bit like that idea. So people in the house have gone to bed and they've all come alive. The only two who did not stir from their places were the tin soldier and the dancing lady. She stood straight up on the point of one of her toes and stretched out both her arms, and he was just as enduring on his one leg, and he never turned his eyes away from her, so he's just looking at her. Oh, that's lovely. Now, the clock struck 12, and bounce, the lid flew off the snuff box, but there was not a snuff in it, but a little black goblin. You see, it was a trick. "Tin Soldier," said the goblin, "will you keep your eyes to yourself?" But the Tin Soldier pretended not to hear him. "Just you wait till tomorrow," said the goblin. But when the morning came and the children got up, the Tin Soldier was placed in the window, and whether it was the goblin or the draft that did it, all at once the window flew open and the soldier fell head over heels out of the third story. So he's 3 floors up and he's fallen out of the window. Oh, that was a terrible passage. He put his legs straight up and stuck with his helmet downwards and his bayonet between the paving stones. Oh my word, so he's stuck in the street now. The servant maid and the little boy came down directly to look for him, but though they almost trod upon him, they couldn't see him. If the soldier had cried out, "Here I am," they would have found him, but he did not think it fitting to call out loudly because he was in a uniform. Now it began to rain, and the drops soon fell thicker, and at last it came down to a complete stream. When the rain was past, 2 street boys came by. "Oh, just look," said one of them. "There lies the Tin Soldier. He shall go out sailing." And they made a boat out of newspaper and put the Tin Soldier in the middle of it. And so he sailed down the gutter, and the boys ran beside him and clapped their hands. Goodness preserve us, how the waves rose in that gutter, and how fast the stream ran. But then it had been heavy rain. The paper boat rocked up and down and sometimes turned round so rapidly that the Tin Soldier trembled. But he remained firm and never changed countenance, but looked straight before him and shouldered his musket. So he's floating now down the street in a boat made of newspaper. All at once the boat went into a long drain and it became dark as if he had been in his box. "Oh, where am I going now?" he thought. Yes, it's that goblin's fault. If the little lady only sat here with me in the boat, it might be twice as dark for what I should care. Oh dear, he's very upset. Suddenly there came a great water rat which lived under the drain. "Have you a passport?" said the rat. "Give me your passport." But the Tin Soldier kept silent and held his musket tighter than ever. The boat went on, but the rat came after him. How he gnashed his teeth and called out to the bits of straw and wood, "Hold him! Hold him! He hasn't paid toll! He hasn't shown his passport!" Oh, he's a very bossy rat, isn't he? But the stream became stronger and stronger, and the Tin Soldier could see the bright daylight where the arch ended. But he heard a roaring noise, which might well have frightened a bolder man. Only think, just where the tunnel ended, and the drain ran into a great canal. For him, that would have been as dangerous as for us to be carried down a great big waterfall. Now, he was already so near it that he could not stop. The boat was carried out, the poor Tin Soldier stiffening himself as much as he could, and no one could say that he moved an eyelid. The boat whirled round 3 or 4 times and was full of water to the very edge. It must sink. The Tin Soldier stood up to his neck in water, and the boat sank deeper and deeper, and the paper was loosened more and more, and now the water closed over the soldier's head. Then he thought of the pretty little dancer, and how he should never ever see her again, and it sounded in the soldier's ears, "Farewell, farewell, thou warrior brave, for this day thou must die." And now the paper parted and the Tin Soldier fell out, but at that moment he was snapped up by a great fish. Oh, how dark it was inside that fish's body. It was darker yet than the drain tunnel, and then it was very narrow too. But the Tin Soldier remained still and lay at full length with his musket. It's just laying, he's inside a fish now. The fish swam to and fro and made the most wonderful movements, and then became quite still. At last something flashed through him like lightning. The daylight shone quite clear, and a voice said aloud, "The Tin Soldier!" The fish had been caught, carried to market, brought and taken to the kitchen, where the cook cut him open with a large knife. She seized the soldier, round the body with both her hands and carried him to the room where they were all anxious to see the remarkable man who had travelled around inside of a fish. But the tin soldier was not at all proud. They placed him on the table, and there, no, what curious things may happen in the world. The tin soldier was in the very room in which he had been before. Have you got this? With the same children, the same toys stood on the table, and there was the pretty castle with the graceful little dancer in the door. She was still balancing herself on one leg and held the other extended in the air. She was hardy too. I know some people, some young ladies who can do that and put their leg right up in the air. I certainly can't. I would definitely fall over. That moved the tin soldier. He was very nearly weeping with tin tears, but that wouldn't have been proper. He looked at her and she at him. They said nothing to each other. Oh, he's got back to the. Have you understood what's happened? He's fallen out of a window. He's gone down a. He's been put in a boat. He's gone down a drain. He's gone into a canal, down a waterfall, into a fish's tummy. They've caught the fish. They brought the fish back, and the cook found him in the fish's tummy, and now he's back in the same house. How cool is that? That's incredible. Then one of the little boys took the tin soldier and flung him into the stove. What? Flung him into the stove? He gave no reason for doing this. It must have been the fault of the goblin in the snuff box. I'm not sure if it was the goblin's fault. Fancy picking up the tin soldier and throwing him into the fire. That is not a very nice boy, is it, who did that? The tin soldier stood there quite illuminated and felt the heat that was terrible. But whether the heat proceeded from the real fire or from the love, he did not know. Oh, the colours had quite gone from him, but whether that happened on the journey or had been caused by grief, no one could say. He looked at the little lady, she looked at him, and he felt that he was melting, but he stood still, firm, shouldering his musket. Then suddenly the door flew open and the draught of air caught the dancer, and she flew like herself into the stove to the tin soldier and flashed up in a flame, and she was gone. Oh, heartbreaking. So a gust of winds wafted the paper ballerina into the fire with him, and she's burned because she's made of paper. She's gone. Then the tin soldier melted down into a lump, and when the servant maid took the ashes out the next day, she found him in the shape of a little tin heart. But of the dancer nothing remained but the tinsel rose, and that was burned as black as coal. Oh, see, I can't do that. Can you do the heart shape thing with your hands? I can't do it. Oh, so that was quite a journey, and all that was left was a tin heart. Oh, I know somebody would really like that story. Somebody who likes to play with toys and dolls, and her name's Robin, and she loves playing with things like that. But you mustn't play with fire, and you definitely shouldn't be throwing things out of the window, should they? But it's very exciting. It's a good story. So thank you to Hans Christian Andersen for that story. And thank you for listening, and see you soon.